Hey everyone, it's Chenzo87, and this is my first video in a new series of videos that I will be creating where I look at some Pokemon Go PvP basics. Now, for those who know, Pokemon Go introduced PvP over a year ago, and it has become insanely popular. A lot of people love that Pokemon Go adapted the main game series battling into the mobile game, and a lot of people have loved it. A lot of people have hated it, but there is no denying its popularity. A few friends of mine have been into their PvP journey for not that long, and I was having a chat with them recently, and I said to them, what would you want to know when you were starting off your PvP journey? And a couple of them said that the one thing that they were really unsure about was the Pokemon typings. Now, there are 18 individual Pokemon types, and each one of them feature in Pokemon Go. In Pokemon Go, in PvP battles, Pokemon's type can determine how much damage it's going to do to the opponent's Pokemon. Now, in Pokemon Go, there are 3 types of damage. The first one is the one you want. It's the super effective damage. This does the most damage to an opponent's Pokemon. So this is the one you're going to want. And it is determined by your Pokemon typing. The next one is one that you sort of want to avoid as much as possible. It's not very effective damage. Now again, this is determined by a Pokemon's type. The 18 individual types, every single one of them, except one, is effective against another type, but it also loses to another type. So I'm going to be exploring that tonight, which types are more effective against others. In my next video, I'll actually be looking at which Pokemon types don't do as much damage, or they're not effective damage. And finally, we have neutral damage. Now, this is when a Pokemon type is neither super effective or it doesn't do not very much damage. It just does a normal neutral amount. There are some types that, every type that has a neutral damage, and it's really important about knowing which is effective, which is neutral, and which is not very effective. So we're going to get straight into it in no particular order, except, maybe alphabetical. First one is bug typing. Now, bug typing is effective and it beats dark types, psychic, and grass. But flying types, rock types, and fire types beat the bug type Pokemon. So if you are running a bug type Pokemon, it is very important to know which Pokemon types are going to beat you. The next one we're going to look at is dark type. Now, the dark type is effective against ghosts and psychics, but it loses to bug types, loses to fairy types, and it loses to fighting types. The next one, and this is one of my personal favorites, it's a dragon type. Now, dragons are considered mythical in the Pokemon Go world, so it comes as no surprise that dragons are effective against other dragons. So dragon typing is super effective against other dragon types, but it's also weak to other dragon types, as well as ice type Pokemon and fairy type Pokemon. Moving on, we have electric. Now, for those who know Pikachu is an electric type, and it has one weakness, which is ground. For those who know their science, they'll know that ground is an insulator of electricity, and this is where that theory comes into it. But electric is effective against flying types, and it's effective against water types. Moving on, we've got fairy types. Fairy types were introduced in the 6th generation of the main game series, and a lot of Pokemon were rebranded from normal types or other types to a fairy type. It is a very popular type in Pokemon Go, and it does beat some really good Pokemon. It beats fighting types, dragon types, and dark types, but it does have its weakness, and that is from poison types and steel types, which do the most super effective damage against fairies. Now, the fighting type, very popular, and for good reason. It beats 5 types. It beats a normal type, steel type, ice type, rock type, and it beats dark type. So it does have a lot of play in PvP because it does have so many types that it's super effective against. But it loses to psychic, flying, and fairy. So if you're running a fighting type, watch out for those fairies. Next, we've got my favorite, which is fire type. Fire burns through grass, bug, steel, and ice. But it loses to rock, ground, and obviously water typing. The flying type comes next, and it is effective against grass, bug, and fighting. But it loses to rock, electric, and ice. Now, the rock one is funny because there's a theory going around that the reason rock beats flying is because of the old saying, kill two birds with one stone. That's how I remember it. If that's how it's going to help you remember it, you kill two birds with one stone, rock beats flying. Next is ghosts. Now, ghosts are scary, but ghosts, just like dragon, can beat other ghosts. So this is another type that is effective against itself, but is also weak to itself. A ghost-type Pokemon can beat other ghosts as well as psychics. But ghosts also lose to ghosts and dark-type. So ghosts, while being a lot around and very popular, they do have their own weakness against each other. So it is very important to consider when building a ghost-type Pokemon. The next one is grass, which does beat a couple of good Pokemon. It beats rock, beats ground, and it beats water. And it has 5 weaknesses. Weak to poison, weak to bug, fire, ice, and flying. The ground type actually beats a lot of Pokemon. It beats rock typing, it beats poison typing, it beats fire typing, steel, and electric. But it is vulnerable to grass, water, and ice. Speaking of ice, it's effective against flying, grass, ground, and dragon. But ice loses to rock types, fighting types, steel types, and fire types. Now, the next one, it's very sad. It's a normal type. Normal types have one weakness, because they're super strong. Not really. They're weak to fighting, but they're not super effective against anything. Normal type Pokemon are one of those Pokemon that if you build it, you've got to build it properly. You've got to use it properly. It is cool that it's only got one weakness, but it doesn't do any super effective damage against anything. So when you build a normal type Pokemon, always consider that. It's not going to be super effective against anything. The next type is poison, and it beats fairies and grass, but it loses to ground and psychic. Now, funny thought, apparently the reason that psychic beats poison is because of the scientists who create antidotes to a lot of poisons. I like that theory. That's how I remember it. Helps me remember it, so that's what I'm going with. Now, next is psychic, and it beats poison, as we just saw, but it also beats fighting types. On the other hand, psychic loses to ghost, bug, and dark. Rock type. Now, rocks are very strong. They beat fire, ice, flying, kill two birds with one stone, and bug types. But they lose to a ground type, a steel type, fighting, grass, and water. Steel types. Steel types introduced in the second generation of Pokemon Gold and Silver series. Very popular. Very, very popular because they can beat fairies, they can beat ice, and they can beat rock. But they lose to ground, fire, and fighting. So while they are popular because they can beat some decent Pokemon, they do have their weaknesses. So it is important to watch out for those weaknesses. And finally, we've got water type. Now, the water type is actually the most abundant type in Pokemon. In the Pokemon world, it is the most abundant type. And it beats rock, fire, and ground. But it loses to electric and grass. So those are the 18 types of Pokemon that you can encounter in Pokemon Go or in PvP. Remember, it's always important to understand your Pokemon's typing. Now, there are certain Pokemon that have 2 types, and we'll be looking at that in the next video. We'll be looking at dual type Pokemon as well as Pokemon types that resist other moves. It's not just about losing to them, it's about doing that not very effective damage. So this was the first video in a new series of Pokemon Go PvP Basics 101. This is Pokemon Typings. I am Chenzo87. I hope you've learned something. If you want, you can comment and tell me some of the things that you want to know or want to learn about in your Pokemon Go PvP journey. Until then, good Pogo to you. I'm Chenzo87.